I've said it 1,000 times over that I love the Warriors franchise. Rarely has it ever let me down, and in my comparison of Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors, the real winner, to me, was neither. It was actually Warriors Orochi. I've always loved that series for mixing up the characters from the game company that I love, and Musou Stars was announced a while ago, and I wanted to touch on that before too much gets revealed. The big thing we know is that there are only going to be about 30 characters initially, and the story is a build-your-own kind of thing. We see some silhouettes in the trailer, but who are they? Lu Bu is the only one that I recognize right off the bat, plus there's this little fucker. Don't know who that is? It's Opuna. No one knows Opuna, but seeing him gets me excited. That being said, Koei has stated that the fan-favorite characters that don't make it into the full release of the game can be made into DLC at a later date. Initially, this statement gave me the idea to make a top 10 list of characters I'd like to see, but with the creation of this show, I decided to speak out for all the franchises and games that seem to have been forgotten, or just make random suggestions because that's what this is all about. Let's talk about some characters that I'd like to see in Musou Stars, and you let me know who you'd like to see down in the comments below. First off, I have to touch on the more modern games. I really wish that Koei Tecmo could get the licenses to use some of these spin-off series characters so that we could get the full Warriors experience. I can see these characters being DLC before they're made into the full game. These would include Luffy and possibly Zoro from One Piece Pirate Warriors. Then there's Ken and Rao from Fist of the North Star Ken's Rage. These two spin-off titles, especially One Piece, would bring in a lot of fans and get them to try out something new. Let's not forget that Tecmo's Team Ninja worked on Metroid Other M. I know it's a touchy subject, but it would be cool to have some Nintendo exclusive characters. By the time this game is completed, it could probably be ported to the Switch. And then there's also Link from Hyrule Warriors. Can't forget about him. Then there are also a few characters that I don't know if they'd even be considered. These are the ones that Koei Tecmo hasn't actually worked on the games, but have some sort of connection, like Hyperdimension Neptunia. Koei Tecmo helped to distribute the first two games here in North America, and they helped to publish them in Europe. It wouldn't be the first time that these characters have been in a hack-and-slash game. Action Unleashed is out for the Vita and Steam, and I don't own it for Steam, and getting Vita footage is next to impossible. So here's a picture of the Steam store page. Nailed it. I also wanted to point out that Ayane from Dead or Alive was featured as a guest character in Sunrun Kagura Estival Versus. It'd be really cool if Asuka would make an appearance in Musou Stars. Again, the characters from this game aren't unfamiliar with hack-and-slash combat, and would make a perfect addition to the roster as guest characters from other companies. I also wanted to talk briefly about characters from games that have already been represented in Warriors Orochi or in Musou Stars, but my favorite character wasn't included. Characters like Hitomi from Dead or Alive. I think I just like her because her fighting style is the same one I learned when I was younger. Then there's Rig. I just want him in because he's Canadian. Achilles was included in Warriors Orochi 3 and was a welcome addition from the Canadian-made Warriors Legends of Troy, but I feel had no reason to be there with the exception that he's considered the strongest of his peers. I would have liked to see Paris, or really any of his enemies, appear in Warriors Orochi as well. Nemeo is also featured in Warriors Orochi 3 as part of the Zil-Ol series of RPGs, and I would have preferred Arius, Dagda, and Celine to make an appearance because they're the playable characters in the newest entry, Trinity Souls of Zil-Ol. This is one of their series that hasn't had an entry for a while, and would be cool to see on PS4. I know Sophie and Plekta are appearing in Musou Stars, but I thought I would mention the Atelier game that I couldn't seem to put down, Atelier Eska and Logi. I'd love to see these two make an appearance. It probably won't happen because there are already two Atelier characters in the roster, but I can always dream of DLC. Staying on the topic of Gust, who is the subsidiary of Koei Tecmo that makes the Atelier series, Knights of Azure has a perfect character just waiting to get the Warriors treatment. Arnis would belong well among the cast, and if you played the game, you'd know what I'm talking about. You could even have some of her special attacks with different monsters from the game. Now I want to touch on some of the characters that have probably been forgotten. These are the characters in games I'd like to see make a comeback. Stuff like Crimson Sea. The very first game was an Xbox exclusive, and after poor sales, they put the sequel out exclusively on the PS2. Problem was releasing a sequel to a console where those players couldn't go back and experience the previous game without having the other console. This led to even more poor sales. I know the game has a fan base out there, but it doesn't seem to be very vocal. So here I am speaking out about the awesome sci-fi Warriors combat. Sho and Fine would be perfect for Musou Stars as DLC, and I'd love to see a Crimson Sea 3 on PS4. But I'd also settle for an HD re-release of both games. Another game I'd like to see represented in some way would be Mystic Heroes. When I finally got my GameCube, it was the first Nintendo home console that I had ever owned. It was my second year at college, I believe, and it was on sale at a shop that was going out of business, so obviously I'd pick it up with a controller for 20 bucks. Who wouldn't? I already owned Mystic Heroes for the console because I was getting started on my Koei Tecmo collection back then. After some research, I found out that there was a PS2 version all along, so I got that, and that's what you're seeing here. Doesn't it look like a chibi Dynasty Warriors? The thing that got me when I was younger was the 4-player versus. This was a lot of fun back in the day, and now it's just fun to play, period. The only thing about adding the characters from this game to the roster would be that there's a couple that are already there, from Warriors Orochi. Well, you see, in the Japanese release, they were given names from the story Fensheng Yanyi. Naja, the badass female warrior, is actually Neja. And yes, she's only a girl in the English release. Tai is actually Taigong Wang. Other than that, I don't think there are other characters that are actually in Warriors Orochi, even to have them as alternate costumes if these characters are featured in Musou Stars. Or you can keep their English names and have them be separate characters. There's also Sid and Felina of Quantum Theory. Yes, the game isn't the greatest, but it would be cool to at least acknowledge this game. They could be one character together, and it could be Sid alone, and his charge attacks in Musou could involve Felina. I always liked the premise of this game, even if the gameplay wasn't for me. And finally, out of all the games that may have been forgotten, I'd like to remind everybody, and Koei Tecmo, that Rygar exists. This character would be perfect to add into Musou Stars. They've stated that they want this to be different from other Warriors titles and make each character feel more individual. Rygar would be perfect in this regard, as he has 3 different disc armors, one for each fast, heavy, and normal attacking patterns. I also wanted to mention this character because they've added his arcade game to the PlayStation Store. It's an easy 100% trophy game, but it's still fun. The fact that they've acknowledged this game's existence makes me really hopeful. Please, Koei Tecmo, make a new Rygar game. Team Ninja could kill this one. The other thing I expect from Musou Stars is smaller references to other games. These can be through stages, music, or even dialogue. Maybe even challenges, as we've seen in other Warriors games. So here's a few ideas. I think it would be funny to have a stage that's designed around the various Tecmo sports titles, maybe even include Tecmo Bo as a character. This I'd expect as DLC, but it would be really cool. Tecmo Bo, though he's only featured in Tecmo Bowl, could be an all-around sports character, using a bat and different kinds of balls, but dressed as a football player. It'd be a really cool nod to the famous title. Another game that could be added is G1 Jockey and Gallop Racer. These two could be combined and added as a challenge stage. This would be a fun mini-game to play when you want to unwind from killing so many peons. Maybe add a challenge stage where you have to kill as many enemies as you possibly can within a short period of time. These stages could be smaller references to other games. The stages don't have to be large, and the enemies only require foot soldiers, and actual characters could appear at random. I'd love to see the aforementioned Tecmo Bowl and Jockey games be gifted this appearance. Monster Rancher is another series that comes to mind that I'd like to see, and I couldn't figure out which monster would make a good playable character, so why not have various monsters be the hordes of enemies that you're killing to rack up your score? And lastly, Fatal Inertia could be a similar challenge, where you're trying to kill a bunch of enemies but vehicles keep driving through the stage and you have to avoid them. There are so many other games that I'd like to mention, but I haven't had a chance to really dig my teeth into, or they're just so long forgotten that I doubt even mentioning them will jog anyone's memory. Stuff like Tokobots, Winback, Spray, and Destrega. Games that barely had a lifespan in the market. Anyways, what are your thoughts on Musou Stars? Are you disappointed at the roster size? I was at first, but the statement of DLC allows me to forgive it for now. I'm going to remain optimistic about the game. Hopefully some of these characters will make it in somehow. What are some characters and references you'd like to see? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching.